Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build MLB edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith. We're going to walk you through today's main slate for MLB, Friday, September 13th. We just got done pushing out the NFL main slate for week 2, so be sure to catch that at the channel. If this video helps you at all, please give it a like and also subscribe to the channel. All right, Taylor, yesterday we just had a 5-game slate thanks to Thursday Night Football scheduling probably, and now we have a lot more games to work with. So starting off with a banger, we have the Red Sox and the Yanks at Yankee Stadium. Clark Schmidt taking on the Bo Sox and Tanner Houck taking on the Yankees. I don't really think this is an advantageous spot for either pitcher, but Boston does have a lower K rate than yesterday, but about 25% almost. You can argue the case for either pitcher because they're decent pitchers, but this feels like a game to maybe go after the bats. I don't really have a lean necessarily here. I guess I'd probably side with the Yankees, but I think both are in play.
I'm not really getting to anything. I think it's two pretty good pitchers. I think it's two fine offenses. There are just better hitting spots to target on this slate, I think. Schmidt and Houck are both okay prices in the low 8s. I have a lean to Schmidt just because Boston is a higher strikeout lineup, but not really dying to pick on them if I don't have to with other good pitchers on the slate. And Schmidt, I think, has had kind of workload issues. They've been kind of ramping him up slowly. So not really looking to prioritize anything on either side.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I think just because the park and the offense is involved, I would want to get some exposure to them. And I'm just not really interested in playing the pitchers in this environment. All right, Cardinals and Blue Jays in Toronto. Eric Fetty taking on the Blue Jays. It's not a very good strikeout matchup, and they have 172 collective ISO, so I don't really think I have any interest in him. Kevin Gausman on the other side has been very erratic all season long. He gets the Cardinals, who don't strike out that much, 21% whiff rate. He is a good price, though, at 8K flat, so I think if you want to, you can get to him. But, I don't really like either of the offenses here. I think if I did anything, it'd be Kevin Gausman, but I don't even really like him that much. I like the price, but neither matchup is very alluring.
I like him a little bit just because of the price, like you said, and St. Louis isn't the most threatening offense, but historically, at least, a decent park for offense. So I think the Cardinals' bats on the other side are viable. Probably more of a mini stack than a full stack. They do get a park boost, though, and they're kind of affordable across the board, so I don't hate it. Gausman has been kind of weak, in particular against lefties. So Burleson, Nootbaar, guys like that, Brendan Donovan even in the middle of the lineup. I don't think it's the worst stack that's going to garner no ownership. And Gausman I'll have a little bit, but it's hard to get too excited about it.
Yep, I agree. I was just going to check his ownership real quick. That was the light delay. He's really not that owned, about 14% on this slate, where it seems like the ownership is pretty split, especially up top. I don't think that would make me feel different either way. I just think it's a good price point. So if you want to go get a little bit of Gausman, there's nothing wrong with that. All right, the Guardians are in Florida taking on the Rays. Zach Little taking on the Guardians. They don't really strike out that much, so he doesn't look very appealing. Tanner Bybee on the other side against the Rays. They normally strike out, but their collective whiff rate right now for this projected lineup is just below 22%. I think Bybee still looks pretty good here. I think the price, where is he? 8.3. I think that's good. I think that's fine. So I have a little bit of interest in Bybee, not super interested in either offense, and I don't really want Zach Little.
Yeah. Bybee's fine. He's kind of like Gausman and Schmidt. Like there's this whole group of low 8K pitchers that are all just okay.
Right.
Not getting them a ton. I think Ober for a little bit more. Logan Webb. We got DeGrom on this slate. There are just guys to target that look better. Kikuchi, Dylan Cease at the high end. So Bybee not really on my radar. Certainly not Littell. And then I guess Tampa Bay is an okay cheap power stack in a good park, but that's kind of a pure 150 max.
Yeah, that's a good point, because Bybee right now, at least the ownership's kind of in the middle of updating, but last I saw, he was at about 26%, just below Dylan Cease and just above Kikuchi. So if he is going to be pretty owned, I'm with you on looking at the Rays a little bit. In a vacuum, I don't really like them, and honestly, compared to these other options, when you look at the matchups, I do prefer Bybee over Schmidt, Hauk, and Gausman. But I understand why he has the ownership, obviously, too. So I do like him, but I do not mind the logic of the leverage stacks there. All right, Dodgers in Atlanta against the Braves. Landon Knack taking on the Braves. They have a 24% whiff rate. His profile doesn't look super inviting, but it's not terrible, especially considering they do have strikeouts in their lineup. The Dodgers will take on Spencer Schwellenbach. They don't strike out, obviously, we know, and they have a 202 collective ISO. He can whiff the hell out of righties, but he struggles a little bit against the left side, giving up a 202 ISO to left-handed bats, and his strikeout rate drops by 12%. So obviously Dodgers have a lot of good lefties. I like the Dodgers a little bit here. Schwellenbach is a little bit steep at 9K flat at DraftKings, considering the matchup. So yeah, I don't really want Landon Knack at all, but I think that's just Dodgers or bust for me in this one.
Yeah, I agree. There is weather in this game, so be cognizant of that. But Dodger lefties in particular look decent, like you said. Schwellenbach has struggled against lefties. They've got Muncy, Freeman, Ohtani, Lux, Edman all in the projected lineup, so it's pretty elite.
Not good for him.
It's the kind of team you can get to every single day. Find enough spot. Not a priority stack necessarily, but I would get them in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, on a slate, it's a bigger slate. It's a Coors slate. I mean, if the Dodgers are at all going to be a little bit overlooked for some reason, I like them even more. But yeah, they look really good. My apologies to anybody watching. I did not have the screen shared on there, but fortunately, we're only about 3 games deep here before I notice it. Brady Basso taking on the White Sox. That always sounds good. He is 4K flat. I think he's going to be. I saw the projected pitch count was about 74. Obviously, it's a really good matchup. The White Sox don't have a lot of reliable power. They do strike out a good amount. So I don't have anything bad to say about him. Small sample size here for sure, but so far it looks good. On the Oakland side, they're facing Garrett Crochet, who I assume is still super limited. And if we look back, let's see. Yeah, he's maxing out under 60 pitches. So we can't use Crochet with confidence. I just wouldn't do it. On the other side, he hasn't really been that good either. So even though there's no leverage to be gained because he's not somebody we should be rostering really, the Athletics do look pretty good here. He does give up a 167 ISO to righties, and they have a lot of good ones, and they have a 224 collective ISO. So, I mean, you're not worried about Crochet really. So I think the Athletics look honestly pretty appealing here. It's basically him, the Athletics, and then this Basso guy, a 4K man. I'm game for that against the White Sox.
Yeah. He's probably going to be pretty chalky because he's 4K and facing the White Sox and maybe not a gas can. So fine with him. I will get to him a lot. I think the White Sox are stackable for that reason, though. He's pretty much an unknown, and it's a good park. The White Sox are fucking dog shit, but they're cheap. I have 4 White Sox stacks in my current build here in the middle of the afternoon. The teams you're pairing with them, or the teams I have paired with them, are the Yankees, Dodgers, Rockies, and Astros. So stacking the White Sox is one way to get to elite offenses with them. And I think on this slate, that's fine since you're getting the leverage against Basso. But I will have more Basso than White Sox for what it's worth. I do think Oakland is a good stack because the White Sox bullpen behind Crochet is also dog shit. So it's a good park for them too. They do have a lot of power in the lineup. I think Oakland is generally a pretty underrated offense, and Crochet even hasn't been great in quite a while. So there's a chance they could get to him, and then they get to feast on that terrible group of relievers behind him.
Yeah, and kind of what you're alluding to, Basso is carrying ownership, 4th highest owned pitcher on the slate at 21% right now. And I would imagine since he's 4K and facing Chicago, that will only rise. All right, moving on here. We got the Reds and the Twins in Minnesota. Let's see. Twins are facing Julian Aguilar. That's how you say his name. And then Baby Ober is taking on the Reds. I don't know. I mean, I think Ober's okay here. What is his price at, actually? 8.6K feels a little bit steep because the Reds do have a little bit of power, don't strike out that much. On the other side, the Twins, they got the splits here. Is it Aguiar? Is that his name?
Looks like it.
Okay, he's giving up a 326 ISO to lefties and not really striking anybody out. And they have a lot of good lefties, so I like the Twins here. They look pretty good. 202 collective ISO against righties. Looks like they have all their main regular lefty mashers in here too, except for Kepler. But they look good. So I think Twins look pretty good here. I'm okay with the Reds. I'm okay with Ober. I have no problem playing both sides of that. But on a bigger slate, I think I would just want to prioritize the ones I really feel good about, and that would be the Twins in this game.
I like Ober okay. He's one of those 8-ish K guys that looks pretty decent. So fine with that. I do think Cincinnati against him is a fine stack as well. Ober, I expect, will be somewhat popular. And Cincinnati is an okay enough offense. They have a very low total, but they do have good hitters there. Obviously, De La Cruz, Friedel, guys like that are decent enough. Minnesota is good. Like, it's a good spot against Aguiar, who's been horrible, but they pinch hit so much for these guys that it feels like a bad team to stack, especially if they're going to be owned. Guys like Julien, Larnick, Wallner even have pinch hit risk. I think Wallner in particular is fine because he has so much power. Of course, you're hoping he hits a home run, and then if he dips, whatever. But the full stack is a little riskier for that reason. So between the two stacks in this game, I feel a little bit better about Cincinnati.
All right, moving on to the Coors game. Javier Assad taking on the Rockies at Coors Field, and then Austin Gomer taking on the Cubs. Obviously, both offenses are in play. Not super interested in the pitchers, even though they're cheap. I mean, you could always argue to use Assad against the Rockies because the Rockies aren't good. But I'm not going to do that personally. I think the Cubs are the better play here on paper. Just get a massive park upgrade. They don't strike out that much. And they're not facing a good pitcher. So Cubs look really good. The only issue is they're going to be chalky.
Yeah, and Gomber is not good, but he's also not horrible. He's got pretty good control, keeps the ball on ground a little bit against lefties in particular. So it's fine. The Cubs are expensive, so you're going to have to probably play Basso with them. And I expect that to be quite the chalky build. High-end pitcher Cubs with Basso. So if you're doing the Cubs, you should be sure to try and do something else with pitching, or maybe mini stack them with a shitty team like the White Sox or whatever. Colorado's okay, just a bad offense. Great park, fine enough matchup. I'm not scared of Assad. They should be the lower round of the two offenses in this game as well. So there's always merit to playing anyone in Coors, and the Rockies tend to be the under-owned team there.
Yeah, by the way, when we were talking about the Dodgers earlier, just worth noting there's a little bit of weather for that game. It doesn't seem like it's a PPD risk, but it is. There's a potential risk for delay, and then you just never know. So just something to keep in mind. But yeah, I'm with you. Both offenses are in play, but if they're going to be chalky, I'm going to probably look to do something else. If I was going to target Coors like everybody else is, I'd probably just go with the Cubs over the Rockies. Kikuchi taking on the Angels looks like a pretty good matchup for him. 29% whiff rate. It's inflated a little bit by some guys who have barely played. And they don't have much power on the table here, at least not much proven power. So Kikuchi looks really good. Nice strikeout rate. Numbers across the board are pretty favorable. Then you have the Astros taking on Samuel Aldegari. Bad with names, man. So the Astros look pretty good here. It's a super small sample size for him. So it's not really clear yet how to attack them. So I would just lean on the power lefties that they have in play. So yeah, Houston looks good. And Kikuchi on the other side is a pretty good play as well. What's his price? 9.2 feels a little bit high for him, but I think it's a good spot to use him.
Yeah, he's had like a 31% K rate since joining the Astros. So they've done it again with another guy who was kind of volatile before. Great spot. Park downgrade. I do think the Angels are a good stack for leverage in a good park for power. They do have at least a couple of decent righties, Ward, Neto, Ohapi. Don't know who this Charles LeBlanc guy is. He sounds like an old-timey author to me, but he's a cheap guy in the lineup. Not a fun stack, though. Kikuchi's one of the better pitching options on the slate. Not going out on a limb there. I think the Astros might be my favorite stack overall against Aldegary. He's not a bad prospect, but it's only his third start. They've gotten healthier. They have Kyle Tucker back. Tucker and Alvarez just mash fellow left-handers, so not scared of that for them. And then the righties, obviously Altuve, if he's in the lineup, Bregman, Pena, Yanner Diaz. The stack is very easy to build, and then there's some cheap guys at the bottom. So dollar for dollar, ownership considered. I don't think they'll be under the radar, but they're not going to be like Cubs chalky. So I think Houston is the top stack on the slate for me.
Yeah, I have no complaints with Houston whatsoever. And I would agree. The Angels are an interesting leverage stack. Ownership right now for Kikuchi, he is the third highest owned pitcher with 24% ownership. And I would imagine that at least stays, if not grows. So, yeah, I wouldn't feel good about it because I'd definitely be overweight on Kikuchi just because he's in a great spot. But anytime there's going to be a good pitcher as high owned, that is instant leverage. We have to consider it. On the other side, in the next game, we have the Brewers in Arizona taking on the Diamondbacks. Freddie Peralta against Arizona. Not a very fun matchup. They don't strike out. They walk a decent amount, something he has issues with. And they have a lot of power, a 201 collective ISO. So he's obviously a good real-life pitcher, most expensive pitcher on the board. But he hasn't really been elite lately. He's had an up and down season. I think, look at his last 4 games. He's topped 11 fantasy points one time. So he's not really somebody we can feel really good about. Not on my radar, really, because the matchup isn't very good. If he was owned, I would consider Arizona more. I think they're okay. He's not really garnering any ownership at all, though, so there's no leverage to be had there. On the other side, Eduardo Rodriguez will take on the Brewers. They don't strike out that much. They tend to get on base. And they can get steals and all that. So I think they're always in play, but this doesn't really feel like the spot to really climb on them. Rodriguez's numbers are not very favorable. Very low K rate. He's given up 220 ISO to the right side of the plate this year. So I guess you could favor righties. Brewer stack is in play. It's just not a priority.
Yeah, this game is kind of a stay away all the way around. I don't want Peralta at all at his salary. Don't really want to pick on him, though. I think Diamondbacks are okay. Like, it is a very good lineup. They have Ketel Marte back. So if you want to stack them, I don't think you're wrong for that. I feel a bit better about Milwaukee just because Erod has been not the same Erod since he came back. The numbers across the board are brutal, particularly against lefties. He's always been a reverse split lefty, which is worth noting, but still tend to lean to the righties. Churio, Contreras, Willie Adames, guys like that. Gary Sanchez, if you need a cheaper catcher. I think it's a somewhat appealing stack, but not something I'm getting to a ton.
Yeah, I just think they only have like 3 or 4 guys that project really well, and then the rest of the lineup is kind of like eh. But yeah, he hasn't been good, so you can definitely pick on him if you want to. All right, last couple of games here. We got Rangers visiting Seattle. Jacob deGrom is back. He's going to be limited to probably about 65 pitches. So, I mean, he has an elite K rate in the past, obviously 39% K rate last year, although that was a small sample size. Even so, we know he strikes people out. The question is, will he get it done in that amount of time? At 8.5K, I don't really want to do that. But the Mariners do have a 26% whiff rate and all that. So you can do it if you want to. I just don't think there's enough there to really take advantage of. Emerson Hancock takes on the Rangers. Rangers were a good play yesterday. I don't know if this is the spot to use him now. Not that he is necessarily scary. It's just not exactly the same. So for me, it's probably a full fade for the whole thing.
Doesn't Emerson Hancock sound like a guy that would have been in like a Agatha Christie book or something? Like,
see?
Yeah. Great name.
Yeah. It's like he's a detective. It was the guy behind the wall, see?
So stupid. The bats look pretty bad in this game. Not really going to play either team. I think DeGrom is interesting just because he's DeGrom. Obviously, we haven't seen him in quite a while. First start of the year is going to be super limited. I think 65 pitches would be kind of on the welcome side. I could see it being far less than that.
Yeah.
And he's not cheap, but I'll probably play him a little bit because it's Seattle in a great park for pitching. Strike out a ton. When he's healthy, he's the best pitcher of his generation. But Obviously, we haven't seen that on a large scale in a number of years. So there are a lot of question marks. I'm willing to take some shots on him in tournaments just because the pitching slate is kind of poop all around. So I'll probably play him a little bit. I just don't think there's a ton of upside, obviously.
I mean, he doesn't have the fast track to a win, and
No,
we
he's
don't
probably
know.
not getting the win. He's
Right.
probably
We
not
don't know how
getting
limited
that
or
wins.
effective he'll be. So I think it's a full fade for me. I understand like the name recognition and the upside. Like if he came out and was just dealing, he could in 64 pitches easily get like 8 strikeouts or something. He absolutely can do that. So I see it.
It's a lot like the Rocker thing last night
Yeah.
where he was 8-5 in the same matchup. We knew he'd be limited. He pitched 4 innings. I think he had 7 strikeouts.
Yep.
Not
That's
saying
exactly.
DeGrom
It's the
is going
same
to do
thing.
that, but that's kind of what you're hoping for. And I think he's capable of it. So,
Yeah.
and last night was a smaller slate, so easier to kind of take that plunge. But not saying you should play DeGrom or anyone should, but I will play him a little bit just in case.
Right. All right, last game of the night, we have Padres visiting the Giants. Dylan Cease looks like the best pitcher on the board in terms of sheer upside. He's been pretty bad. So it's tough to really trust that, and we'll get to that in a second. But for what it's worth, he's got an elite K rate. He's facing the Giants in the Pitcher Park. They have a 27% collective K rate. They do have some power, though, and he is the highest owned pitcher on the board at 27%. That could climb, obviously, once people start realizing Freddie Peralta isn't somebody we really want to pay for. DeGrom's limited, and just all these other things that factor into the slate. So if he's going to be owned at any capacity, I think looking at Giant stacks makes sense. That said, this is one of those classic both sides because Cease is in a good spot across the board. It does look good. He hasn't been living up to his name, though. I mean, these are his last 3 starts: 8.7, 10.3, 3.2 fantasy points. He hasn't had over 20 fantasy points since July 31st. He's been bad, like just flat out bad. We know, though, the nice thing about Cease is he can deliver for you with his strikeouts, even if he gets rocked. So I think on this slate where you kind of mentioned like the pitching isn't like, it's not a home run really right now. Like you're thinking about DeGrom over here. So like, it's not that, favorable. So Cease looks good relative to the slate. He looks good. I just will definitely get a good amount of Giants as some leverage. On the other side, you do have Logan Webb going up against the Padres, who do not strike out at all. I think Webb is just a decent pitcher at 8.8K in this park. And with his profile looks really good. The only problem is he's facing a low strikeout lineup that can be dangerous. So I think Webb, when you're looking in that 8K mid range, I think he's okay. You can play Webb because I don't think he's going to garner that much ownership. Let me just check real quick. He's not even in the top 5, top 6. So I think he's okay. Just don't expect like a massive 30-point fantasy outing.
Yeah, I like them both. It is Webb's second straight game against the Padres, for whatever that's worth. They do have give him a long leash generally. Like they'll let him throw 110 pitches on occasion if things are going well. So there's upside there. I don't think he's going to be owned at all. So I'll get to him a bit. Cease is the top guy on the board. I think it's justified. It's a great park. I see the Giants thing, but like my hang up is on such a large slate with 21 other offenses. Even if the Giants get to Cease a little bit, are you getting enough from them in this park to where they're fully shattering the slate and winning you all the money? Like you're probably flying past some Cease lineups if they get to him a bit, but if they score like 6 runs, which would vastly exceed their expectation, are they really getting you where you need to go in a tournament on a slate that's this big? I don't really think so. So I'm not I see the leverage thing, but I'm not really getting to the Giants, even though Cease will be owned. I'd rather try that with some other better offenses. And I don't know. I just don't really think this is the slate for that.
Well, you're talking about a Giants offense that did just tattoo my Brewers for 13 runs a couple of games ago. So don't say they can't do it. But yeah, it's a fair point because Cease himself, while he hasn't been getting there, he isn't giving up like more than 4 runs in his bad starts. It's not like you're getting on Cease and just like he's giving up 9-run games. It's not really what he's doing. He's just bad enough to the point where he's getting pulled early.
You're just disappointed you played him because he's not getting enough. He's walking too many guys.
Right.
Like
so
that.
While I still think there's leverage to be had with the Giants, I think the better play, at least the more logical play, would to be underweight on Cease. So that makes sense. But I still like him. I think I'm probably more so on going with Cease and hoping he bounces back here. And overall, across the board on this slate, he and Kikuchi are my favorite two pitchers. And I'm probably just going to alternate them with Basso, and like that's what I'm going to do at pitcher for the most part. I just don't see the point. It's not really that good of a pitching slate. One of Cease or Kikuchi should have a good game, right? But since
they both should, but
but since I'm doing that, since I'm going to keep my pitching pool so tight, I'm probably going to leverage with Giants and Halo stacks a little bit, and also White Sox even too, in a couple lineups.
Yeah.
All right. So that does it for us for the full breakdown. Before we leave, why don't you give me your number one stack and your number one pitcher for the night?
Number one stack is still the Astros against Aldegary. Nice park boost, good matchup and all that. Number one pitcher is Cease. Basso's right there with him. I like Webb and Gaussman quite a bit. I'm getting to them more than Kikuchi at the moment, which does not feel great, but it is what it is, Kevin.
Yep. That's true. It is. It always is what it is. For me, as long as the weather is not problematic, the Dodgers are my number one stack, especially with Coors and the Astros and a couple other teams on the slate. I think it's very possible they go a little bit overlooked. And then for pitching, I do like Cease, but the number one pitcher for me is Kikuchi. He has the best matchup on the board probably, and he's been really good, like you said. And then, I would entertain a little bit of leverage like we've been discussing in this video, and also just kind of keep in mind of the other plays that we've mentioned. All right. Hopefully this helps you out. If it does, give this video a like and also subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and good luck.